Welcome to this video, continued coverage of my tournament that I played in Mallorca, on Mallorca, this nice island in the Mediterranean Sea. Yeah, we are in the fifth round now, so I was on 3 out of 4 points, winning the first 3 games and losing in round 4 against a strong GM. And the fifth round was a close call. It was in terms of the pairings, it was very close that I actually would be still the bottom half of this group of players, but it turned out that I was still part of the top group. So I got a somewhat weaker opponent, relatively speaking. He was a FIDE master called Adel Lachaichi. I'm probably mispronouncing this, and I'm sorry for that, but it's difficult. He was rated 2,213, so he had lost quite a bit of points from the days when he got the FIDE master title. You need 2,300 to get this. Not an old player. He was in his 30s, early 30s. Yeah, I played black in this game, and when I looked at his games for the preparation, I noticed that he was very predictable. He all the time played c4, e4, knight c3, and g3. This very typical setup. At least he played it in all cases where it was possible. I mean, so what I was trying to do is to get a position type that, well, he played c4 in the game, as was predicted. I wanted to get a position type that is somewhat unconventional and sort of gets him out of his comfort zone. So I pretty much immediately ruled out to play something like c5, for example. After which he will do just something like that, going for a somewhat dry and symmetrical position. So what did I do? I played the English defense, like I also often do when recording the videos. It has a very distinct advantage over some other defenses against c4. It is immediately aiming against the g3 move. If white now plays g3, what he normally does, he plays c4, g3. I get bishop b7 in, and yeah, this kind of position already is very far off from the normal patterns that players going for the English strive for. Yeah, he played e4 now, and then knight c3. This makes some sense. He goes for this e4, c4 anyway. But yeah, as we have maybe already seen in one of my blitz games, this has some twists. e6, and now he played g3. Yeah, according to his usual taste. Here, when white goes for this type of setup with g3, he has 2 or even 3 move orders. He can start with g3 like here in the game, or he can play knight e2. Sometimes knight e2 here is recommended, preparing g3. The idea is that after knight e2, of course, the move f5 does not make any sense, as white can just take it and leave black with a weird pawn formation. After g3, f5 is possible and was played in the game. Maybe knight e2 is the more testing move order here. After that, black needs to switch plans. He cannot play with f5 anymore. But you have other possibilities. Black can go for an entirely different setup with c5 if he wants, or he can play knight f6. And this would have been my choice probably, because it takes him completely out of his usual patterns. He now needs to do something with the e4 pawn, like knight g3 maybe, or even advance it. And this is totally un-English-like. Yeah, he played g3, so f5. I was glad to have this position. Bishop g2, knight f6, putting pressure on e4 with all pieces. So white needs to cover that, and now I took on e4. Here's an important point. He didn't expect the opening. I guess there is no b6 type of game in my games in the main databases that are available. And I don't think he watches my channel, so he couldn't expect the whole thing. Still, he played the best move order here. He played knight e2. This is better than taking on e4 immediately, and for a specific reason. If white takes on e4 now with the pawn, or you can also insert these moves. In both cases, black gets a very easy game with bishop c5, aiming directly at f2. With castling, even the f-file gets into play. That's a very nice position already for black. The important thing is also that white has weakened the d4 square considerably here in this structure. Black sometimes just gets in knight c6, e5, and then put a piece on d4. This is what white wants to avoid, and he started with knight e2, and this is a very clever move. Now I need to commit somehow, and yeah, what can I do? I cannot take on e4, obviously, it's a pin. I played knight c6, and this was part of my preparation, just playing the knight out. Bishop b4 is also not a terribly bad move, but very often I prefer it on c5, so knight c6 is good. Now d3 is really hanging, so he needs to take. If he takes with the pawn, we have the same story again with this bishop coming on c5. And this is a very serious matter. If white is not really paying any attention, it can be very problematic quickly. Look at this, just for example. If white now plays a somewhat routine move, let's say b3, yeah, I'm playing knight g4 and already winning the game. f2 is simply collapsing. It's very problematic. Yeah, so he played the right move. He took on e4 with the knight, and this has been seen before, and still was what I looked at before. Knight e4, and now he took with the bishop. For the same reasoning, d takes, bishop c5 is again a good play with d4 and f2 being targets. Bishop takes, and now I played queen f6. Yeah, I very much like this this idea, quickly going for long castling, and we can put this on the board. And this is the exact position that I wanted to have a somewhat unconventional position that is somewhat outside his normal area of position types that he has. He very often has this very schematic English positions, and this is just totally unconventional. Yeah, okay, play d4. This is a good move. Yeah, I was intending to play bishop c5 and maybe occupying this square on d4. So white goes d4 himself. This makes sense. Yeah, and what I remembered in my preparation was d5, which I played, capturing, and then there was this move knight b4. This I had looked briefly before, and black seemed to be okay. There was a game of well-known player and mostly author John Watson, the well-known theoretician, who is most famous for his work on the French defense. He made a video series on ICC on the English defense, and he recommended this line, which he also had played himself in a game against very strong Mexican Grandmaster Leon Hoyos. Watson got a comfortable position in this game. After this, knight b4, bishop f4, bishop d5, this was played. Maybe bishop d6 is even more precise. I vaguely remembered that at the board that I had looked at this. I mean, I had looked at many lines, so it's not like you just remember one single thing that you looked at. But when I was at the board, I was thinking, okay, what about e takes d5? Is this a bad move? Knight b4 is not bad, but it also simplifies matters a bit. And I was thinking, okay, why not e takes d5? And I played this. E takes d5, bishop g2, what else? And then g5. This is what I had seen. And I kind of like this idea. g5 is occupying or controlling, occupying is wrong, controlling f4, so that you cannot easily put a knight on f4 or a bishop on f4. It allows bishop g7, intensifying the pressure against d4. And yeah, well, e takes d5. I mean, it closes the diagonal, but it also controls important squares here in the center. It keeps pieces on the board. I didn't see anything great against it, so yeah, I went for it. It's a very interesting position. He played bishop e3. This is what I expected. Looks very normal. Need to get the bishop out, maybe prepare rook c1, maybe get something against g5. Yeah, very normal move. Yeah, and here I wasn't really sure what piece setup is best. What it was pretty clear is that the knight on c6 is not well placed, and it should probably go to f5 at some point. But I wasn't sure if I should initiate that right away, because yeah, it also puts some pressure on d4, yeah, like with bishop g7 or similar. So at the end, not after a long time, I decided to play king b8 first. I think this is really a good move, as it is quite often very useful to have the king on b8 instead of c8. It goes out of possible checks here, yeah, with the queen and the bishop. When it was on c8, there was always this possibility in the air. And of course, a7 is protected. In case the knight moves, there is no queen a4 with a tempo. So I think this is a good move. And while I was playing it, I was thinking about a little joke that sometimes is made by a German grandmaster, Klaus Bischoff, very well-known German veteran grandmaster, is also a famous commentator in German chess. And he's always saying that long castles is called long castles because it actually takes two moves. You always have to play king b1 or king b8 later. This is why it is long castles. Takes longer. Yeah, in a way this is true. Very often you need to play these moves, or they are very useful. Okay, he played knight c3. Also what I expected, at least one of the moves that I thought of. It attacks d5. Yeah, and I played knight e7. This was according to plan anyway, because knight f5 I thought was on the agenda. However, what I didn't see here is that he's not really threatening d5. I didn't think about this too long. In fact, I played the whole game really quickly, because I noticed after a couple of moves that he was taking rather lots of time in positions where I thought, okay, here you can play a relatively quick move. And then I started to get quicker myself, to put more pressure on him on the clock. The whole game, I only spent, I don't know, a bit more than 30 minutes to get the pressure on. And this is sometimes a good recipe. If you feel you have a good move, just play it out and increase the pressure on your opponent, when especially in this kind of somewhat quicker time controls. However, here, instead of playing the quick knight e7, which of course makes sense, I also had bishop g7, which I only looked at later with the computer. The thing is, white cannot take on d5. This is not really hanging after queen f7. I'm threatening rook takes d5, getting two pieces for the rook. And white needs to retreat now, and after knight d4, black has a totally dominating position in the center. The knight on d4 is just very strong. And yeah, something like that is probably what white needs to do. You cannot keep the knight there. And something like that is just an excellent position. So white cannot take on d5 after bishop g7. And well, it attacks d4. So it is interesting. Black is not winning or anything. White can play moves like queen h5 or queen a4. Yeah, it would have been interesting to consider, but this is not bad. Yeah, and here he totally surprised me. I was really completely surprised, because I didn't think of this move at all. He played queen h5 in this position. I was only expecting white to do something on the queen side as well. This is where my king is on b8. I mostly expected moves like rook c1 or a4. A4 was my first candidate move here, like a4, a5. And I thought this was reasonably good for white. a4. It was interesting to look at. I mean, a5 as a response is very weakening on the queen side, and white has clearly gained here. Even if you just compare this to the game continuation, this would have been highly favorable in comparison. So queen h5 here is much stronger, as it is stronger than in the game. I probably wouldn't have played a5 here, but go for knight f5 as planned. And then white can go a5. Something like this, for example, is a very unclear situation. White can cover e3 with the queen here and can do something on the a file. It's just a sharp position, but this is what I wanted. I wanted an asymmetrical position to play for a win. Of course, I didn't really mention that before. I mean, this is a must-win situation in this kind of tournament. If you are paired against a guy 200 points lower and you want to play on the top boards and get good opponents, you need to win basically against all lower rated opponents. You can afford a draw maybe at some point. Losing is especially bad, of course, but you really want a win, and I absolutely wanted to win the game. I mean, taking risk and everything to win was clear beforehand. So I would have welcomed this position, but he didn't do that at all. He played queen h5. It is not bad. I'm just saying I was totally surprised. I was only thinking about queenside play. Okay, here I played rook g8 relatively quickly. G5 was really hanging. I cannot ignore it. H6 looks weird. It does nothing for black's development or piece coordination. And in addition, there is the direct move f4, after which I'm not quite sure what black should play. What, however, was interesting was bishop h6. This is somewhat surprisingly for me favored by the engines. It looks a bit unnatural, but it works against this f4 idea, as black can just simply take them. It does not seem to be bad, really. I went rook g8, also I think a good move. Yeah, and now, well, one thing that needs to be mentioned is, what about the h7 pawn? It's not a very human move to take the pawn, but it seems that white could have done it. It's not. It does not seem to be a mistake. I only looked at this very briefly in the game. It was a bit of a poker decision. I mean, I was thinking, okay, well, if he takes it, okay, so be it. I have the h file, and this looks like so computerish, this move. And yeah, he didn't do that. I mean, specifically, I thought rook g6 would be interesting, cutting off the queen and then go knight f5. However, after something like f4, yeah, this is not clear at all. Yeah, f4, g4, f5, knight takes, and now let's say rook a1. This is a totally messy position. White could have taken on h7, but it's not a very human decision, and he didn't do that. His plan was f4 after all, and this is what he played. I think that's also the most consistent move. Yeah, of course I went g4. I don't want to open it up. Something like taking is really not what I want. Something like this. White now enjoys the f file, and this does not make much sense. I wanted to do this, and after g4, of course, black now has a very serious strategical threat. Yeah, knight f5. Probably that's not only a strategical threat, as the queen is in some trouble after that. But knight f5 is also a positional threat, blocking the whole position and killing both bishops. Yeah, white bishop on d5 can sometimes just be blunted with c6, and especially, of course, the e3 bishop is a very sorry piece after knight f5, which also puts pressure on d4 and looks at the e3 square. That, I thought, makes white's next move almost forced, but he didn't play the move that I considered to be forced. And in a way, I think this is the result of this position being so unorthodox, that he simply couldn't manage the tension here. What white absolutely should do is to play f5. I only considered this move, to be honest. I thought everything else must be excellent for black. And yeah, after f5, the situation is very unclear. during the game, I had some doubts even if this is okay for black, but okay, I had decided I wanted to play for a win and risk something. So okay, so be it. It's in fact not so bad. My idea was, of course, after f5 to attack this pawn with bishop f5. And I mean, why does white play f5? It's really to prevent knight f5, yeah, from the black side, and to make sure that this bishop is doing something. It's just the most active move. Yeah, bishop c8 is what I intended to do, increasing the pressure on the f5 pawn. This pawn is, of course, yeah, a strength and a weakness at the same time. The probable continuation here is after bishop c8, something like, let's say, rook a to e1. There's more than one move possible, but this is what I thought during the game. Knight f5, knight d5, and queen g6. Yeah, and this is a really complicated, unclear position that certainly is not bad for white. You can only argue. Yeah, I think this is within a range of equal or a slight edge for one side, but very hard to determine. If you look at something like this, for example, this should be okay for black. Well, black does not have any bad piece. It's got some play against d4, but white is also active. The rooks are active. The pieces are all good. I mean, the computer gives it as totally equal, and that's maybe true for a computer, but this still would have been a position where a fight would occur. It's not like a dull draw position or something. But this is what white absolutely needed to do with f5. He didn't do that. He played queen to e5. Again, a move that really surprised me, because well, I had considered it briefly, but I thought, okay, what exactly is the point? If I go bishop g7, which I did, and rather quickly, I'm now threatening queen f7, basically trapping the queen. So what is his move after bishop g7? I thought, okay, f5 is not possible anymore, or I mean, it does not really help him. I can even consider to grab here, one possibility. Not clear, f6 is a move. Or I can play d4 here, which is also interesting. Looks very good at first because of the pin. Sorry, because of the fork, but there's also this fork. Okay, f5 I thought maybe possible, but even then I don't need to take. I can play a move like this, again threatening queen f7, or threatening to move the queen somewhere else. He took, and well, this cannot really be yeah, a stern test of black's position. This queen h5 f6, yeah, it developed black's pieces. The bishop on g7 is now a fine piece. Yeah, and here again we get to a critical point. Here white only has the choice between two evils, basically. You can allow the knight to jump to f5, getting black a very nice, strategically comfortable position, where I have the pressure on d4, no bad pieces, and I would have loved to play this with the knight coming to f5. Yeah, this didn't happen. He now played f5, which was the strange thing. He could have done that beforehand, and only now he did it. Maybe if we go back, maybe he saw after g4 f5, maybe he saw some idea that his queen would be trapped, but this is simply not the case. I mean, there is no way here to trap the queen. There's still h7 hanging, and you also have h4. Yeah, which is a bit weird looking maybe, but you're not going to get your queen trapped. Maybe he miscalculated something there. Yeah, well, as mentioned, he now played f5. But now the problem is, this is a somewhat isolated warrior here on f5. It's completely unsupported. Bishop c8 attacking this. And now he played rook to f2. Yeah. If I take now on d5, on f5, there's d5 hanging. So I first protected this, and now I expected him to protect it with rook to f1. Yeah, like this. Sorry, this is what he played. to protect it with rook f1. After that, I play rook g to f8 and increase the pressure on f5. Black is much more comfortable here. I can easily protect the pawn here on g4 if necessary, and f5 is just the target. So black is much better already. However, he played knight e2, which was a bit of a surprise because, well, I can just take it. He probably had miscalculated something, as now he took on f5. It seems that he relied on this idea, takes and rook f1, sort of, yeah, attacking both bishops here. But it's simply not working because I actually have more than one reply to that. I can play bishop g5, securing the piece, or I can play rook to e8, which I did. And yeah, now black is a pawn up and an exchange up. And yeah, there's really nothing that white can do. He gave the check. If we look at rook f5 briefly, I just take here. And the bad thing is that black's pieces are coordinated very nicely. So white will lose even more material here. If we look at this, the knight is hanging. So probably something like this, and this is going to happen. Yeah, and then if you move the knight, d4 is falling. And okay, you can, instead of protecting, you can take here, but rook e2 is going to win all the pawns, and white has no counterplay whatsoever. Yeah, he went bishop f4 check, king b7, and bishop e5. Yeah, okay, I can just take here. Recaptured. And rook e5. So an exchange and 2 pawns. Yeah, the rest is pretty simple technical play. Knight d4, bishop g6. Yeah, I went to g6 because this is a nice spot for the bishop. It is always protected by the pawn, and it covers f7, so white cannot activate his rook. Played rook f6. Yeah, here I had a choice. I can also play c5 here, but I covered with rook c8. It's not a big difference. Yeah, this I had seen knight e6, but okay, you're an exchange up and 2 pawns, so it's no need to be overly materialistic. I just played rook e1 here and rook b1, attacking a further pawn here, the b pawn, and offering to return the exchange. He didn't take it. If he takes, I just take here. Yeah, and this is 3 pawns with a completely coordinated position. Everything's covered. No threats. Yeah, he went with this check. And yet another check, getting in some spy checks, so to say. Well, I can just play b5, and there is still this hanging with check. Yeah, white can take on c6 also with the rook here, but this just wins the house. He played knight takes, and after that, yeah, I can also take b2, but I decided to play rook f7, getting the rooks off, which simplifies matters. It allowed him to play a double check, always funny, but it's really not much more than this is what it is, a check. Knight takes d5, exchanged here, took here. Yeah, and here after rook a2 he is able to take b5. The easiest is to play a6, keeping this pawn and attacking a2, and I will just take it next move. He can do that, but after this and this, I'm going to win the pawn anyway, winning with the 2 protected, 2 connected passes here on the queen side. Yeah, so a pretty convincing win, at least I thought, and I think a win that shows you need to prepare for your opponent, not only in terms of concrete lines, but to choose what position type you want. I saw that you really always played this very schematic chess, so I thought getting some sort of asymmetrical and unconventional position would be a good thing, and I think it showed pretty quickly that he couldn't really handle this too well when he went with queen h5, which was okay, but here, yeah, this that he didn't play f5 but queen e5 and the trade here. This was I guess one effect of the somewhat unusual position that he was not used to. He also spent lots of time, really lots of time, which probably wouldn't have happened if we got one of those standard positions that he has on the board all the time. Yeah, this was, of course, in terms of the tournament standings, a very important win, as it brought me back to a score of, or brought me to a good score of 4 out of 5, which meant that the next round I got a very strong Grandmaster opponent again. So look forward to the video on round 6 when I play a Grandmaster again. Thanks for watching.